You don't want to give up on your missing loved one. You want to find them. You want the whole world to do everything they can to look for them. And that's why I carry on. We were told that Richard crossed the bridge at 2:55 p.m. and we have the toll booth receipt that says 2:55. So we were led to believe there was an 8-hour window between his time of departing the hotel to crossing the bridge on that same day. But it's since come to light by tracking down the person who made the machines and making inquiries that was a 24-hour clock. It always was. So that meant 2:55 was 2:55 a.m. We were appealing to people to have seen him at certain times that day when actually those times are meaningless now. We're hoping it'll establish a new line of inquiry because this is vital information that changes everything and turns it all on its head and needs to be looked at again.
Richie Edwards was a Welsh musician, and he was the lyricist and rhythm guitarist of the alternative rock band Manic Street Preachers. He was known for his dark and intellectual songwriting, which, combined with an enigmatic and eloquent character, has assured him cult status. He has been cited as a leading lyricist of his generation, and he went missing in 1995. Richey Edwards was born and raised in Blackwood, South Wales, UK. He had one younger sister, Rachel, and he was very close with his sister. It was a very happy family, by all accounts, a very happy upbringing. It is said that when he was a teenager, he'd walk his dog Snoopy every day and he'd help his sister with her homework and her anxieties. He attended Oakdale Comprehensive School, and this is where he met his future bandmates Nicky Wire, Sean Moore, and James Dean Bradfield. He attended the University of Wales, Swansea, and graduated with an exceptional 2:1 degree in political history. Edwards was initially a driver and roadie for the Manic Street Preachers, but he was accepted as the band's main spokesman and fourth member in 1989. His real contribution to the band was in their lyrics and design. Sadly, Richey Edwards suffered from severe depression, and he was open about it in his interviews. He self-harmed, mainly through stubbing cigarettes on his arms and cutting himself. I quote, "When I cut myself, I feel so much better. All the little things that might have been annoying me suddenly seem so trivial because I'm concentrating on the pain. I'm not a person who can scream and shout, so this is my only outlet. It's all done very logically." End quote. In May 1991, after a gig at the Norwich Arts Centre, a journalist questioned how serious he was about his art, and Richey Edwards responded by carving the words "for real" into his forearm with a razor blade. The injury required 18 stitches. It is said that he also suffered from insomnia and used alcohol to help him sleep at night. At one point, he checked into Whitchurch Hospital and later the Priory Hospital to address his alcohol issue. So what happened to Richie Edwards? Well, on the 1st of February 1995, it was the day when he and Bradfield were due to fly to the United States on a promotional tour of the Holy Bible album. A fortnight before his disappearance, he withdrew £200 a day from his bank account, which was a total of £2,800 by the day of the scheduled flight. Nobody knows if he intended to spend the cash during the tour or whether part of it was to pay for a desk he had ordered from a shop in Cardiff. There is no record of the desk being purchased, though, which would only have explained half the money withdrawn. Incidentally, as quoted in A Version of Reason, the night before he disappeared, he gave a friend a book called Novel with Cocaine, and he instructed his friend to read the introduction, which details the author staying in a mental asylum before vanishing. He left a package addressed to his on-off girlfriend, Jo, whom he met some years prior, although they had split up a few weeks earlier. There was a little note that said, "I love you," and literary quotations, including a picture of Bugs Bunny. On the day of his disappearance, he reportedly checked out of his hotel at 7 a.m., leaving his toiletries, packed suitcase, and some of his Prozac. He then drove to his flat in Cardiff. In those days, when you crossed the bridge that links England to Wales, the Severn Bridge, you had to pay a fee at the toll booth, and he left this ticket showing that he'd paid at his flat in Cardiff. He also left his passport and his Prozac medication at his flat. So bear in mind, when he went missing, he didn't have his passport, his medication, nor his suitcase. There were sightings of him in the 2 weeks following his disappearance when nobody could get hold of him. He was apparently spotted in the Newport Passport Office and also at Newport bus station by a fan. The fan was unaware that he was missing. Going back to the day that he travelled across the Severn Bridge that links England to Wales, he bought a ticket at the toll booth, and police found that ticket. The ticket showed that he travelled at 2:55, and it was always assumed that it was 2:55 p.m, so 2:55 in the afternoon. But this timeline was turned upside down in 2018 due to the original assumption made that it was in the afternoon. However, police realised it was 2:55 a.m, so the middle of the night. Therefore, this timeline of events and subsequent appeals for information were no longer valid. Six days after he was reported missing, a taxi driver supposedly picked Richey Edwards up from a hotel and drove him around the valleys including his hometown of Blackwood. The taxi driver said that the passenger was speaking in a Cockney accent, but occasionally slipped into a Welsh one. The passenger asked if he could lie down on the back seat. Eventually, the passenger got out at the service station near the Severn Bridge, and he paid the £68 fare in cash. Two weeks after Richie Edwards went missing, his car was found at a service station near the Severn Bridge. The vehicle was reported as abandoned. Police found that the battery was dead, and there was evidence that the car had been lived in. The car also had photos that he had taken of his family days before he disappeared. The service station is very close to the Severn Bridge, and it's a known suicide site. It was widely believed that he had jumped from the bridge to his death, but still there's no evidence of this, as his body has never been found. Over the years, there have been many supposed sightings of Richie Edwards. He has been reportedly seen in a market in Goa, India, and also on Forteventura and Lanzarote. There have also been other sightings of Edwards, especially in the years immediately following his disappearance. However, none of these have proved conclusive. Richie Edwards has never been found, and his body has never been recovered. He is widely presumed to have taken his own life, and he was aged just 27 at the time he disappeared. Sadly, he was legally declared dead in November 2008, even though there was no definitive proof that he died either by suicide or anything else. There's a glimpse of his depression in the following quote. "Up to the age of 13, I was ecstatically happy," he had said. "People treated me very well. My dog was beautiful. I lived with my nan, and she was beautiful. School's nothing. You go there, come back, and just play football in the fields. Then I moved from my nan's and started comprehensive school, and everything started going wrong. In my 20s, there's nothing that's been that spectacular since." End quote. Sadly, there was speculation that Edwards might have faked his death and began a life elsewhere. When there were reported sightings in the Canary Islands and Goa, it was excruciating for his parents and younger sister Rachel, as without a body, they could never say goodbye to Richie properly. Interestingly, it was reported that Richie's own uncle went off the grid for 10 years when he went out to lecture in Texas in the 60s and 70s, and this was something that fascinated Richie as a young man. Tragically, there are many celebrities who have died aged 27, including Richie Edwards. Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison all died age 27, and some people call this the 27 Club. So what did happen to Richie Edwards? Did he leave the UK to start a new life abroad? Did he suffer a psychotic episode? Did he become drunk and lost and succumbed to the elements? Was he injured? Was there a serial killer loose on that day? Or did he commit suicide at the known suicide spot where his car was found? Sadly, I think the most logical explanation would be that he took his own life, his car being found near the famous suicide spot, and him having suffered depression for many years before he disappeared. Maybe the upcoming tour was just too much for him to bear and he needed to find a way out. However, it is still possible that he vanished by staging his disappearance and living abroad. An author named Leon went for a haircut in Cardiff and started talking about Richie, according to Wales Online. The lady cutting his hair said, "Richie's actually living in a kibbutz in Israel. Everybody knows that." As you can imagine, it took him aback. They gave this theory no particular credence until Richie's sister Rachel raised the same idea. Yes, Richie had been going on about heading to that part of the world just before he vanished. So what do you think happened to Richie Edwards? Please leave your comments below. If you think you have information pertaining to Richie Edwards' whereabouts, please phone the non-emergency line on 101. May we never forget the strange and mysterious disappearance of Manic Street Preachers' Richie Edwards.